Hi everyone, Mrs. Schirkenbach here. Welcome to my house. How is everyone doing? I miss seeing all of you in the hallways and meeting with some of you to talk about your reading. It's been a little bit lonely here at my house when I don't get to see all of the kids at school. But welcome to my house. This is a room in my house that we call the piano room because the piano is in here. Makes sense, right? So it's a place I love to be because I love to play the piano. Some of you know that about me. But also it's one of my favorite places to read because I have a couch I can lay down on. I always have lots of soft cuddly blankets in here, and it's far away from where the rest of my family typically hangs out, so it's often nice and quiet in here. So when I'm ready to be alone and snuggle up with a good book, this is the place where I like to go. Do you have a good place where you like to read your books? I wish I could hear from you where some of your favorite places are. I hope you're finding some good places to snuggle up and read. Today we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about some things that good readers do. For this lesson, it'd be really helpful if you have something to write with. I have a marker. You could use a pencil or a pen or a marker. Something to write on. I have a marker board, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be a piece of paper, anything that you can write on. And I'm not going to show you the cover yet, but a book that you're reading. If you have those materials with you, it'll help you participate the most possible in this lesson. So if you don't have something to write with and something to write on, or a book that you're reading, please pause the video, go and get your supplies, and then come back and press play and join me again. I'll be waiting. Welcome back. Hopefully you have all the things you need now so you are all set to go and to work with me today. One thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently, especially now that I've been home and have had more time to read, is I've been thinking in my head, what are some things that good readers do? Things that readers do who are what we would think of as a good reader. Some children will tell me, oh, good readers read really, really fast. That makes somebody a good reader. Or good readers are people who can read really, really long words. That makes somebody a good reader. Well, some of that might be true. Good readers might be able to read more quickly at times. Good readers might be able to read really, really long words. But I don't think that's the most important part of being a good reader. I think a good reader is somebody who understands what he or she reads. Being able to understand what you read is what makes somebody a good reader. So when I was thinking about that question, what is a good reader, I started thinking about this question. What do good readers do? Or I didn't even put the word do in there, did I? What do good readers do? I thought, what is it that I do? I think of myself as a very good reader. I love to read and I read all the time. So what are some things that I do when I read to help myself understand what I'm reading? And I'm wondering what you do when you read to help yourself understand what you're reading. This is the time to pick up your pencil or your marker and grab your paper or marker board or whatever you're using. And I'm going to give you just about 30 seconds or so. And on your paper or your board, I'd like you to write down some things that you as a reader do to help yourself understand what you're reading. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to take some time and write down some things that I do as a reader to help myself understand what I read. Everyone ready? Write down those things that you do when you're reading a book that help yourself understand what you read. Keep writing. Think in your mind, what do I do when I'm trying to read a book and I want to understand what I'm reading? About 5 to 10 more seconds. Think of what you do. Were you able to come up with some ideas? What are some things you wrote down? What do you do when you're stuck? Or not even when you're stuck, but when you're reading a book and you want to better understand what you're reading. I wrote down some of the things that I do as a reader when I want to better understand what I'm reading. Here they are. Sometimes I reread. I might read a page a second time, even read a chapter a second time, especially if I'm really stuck, if I'm confused about what's going on. I do something called visualize. I ask questions while I'm reading, and I make predictions. Did any of you write down something similar to me? Today we're going to spend some time talking about this one right here, visualize. You might not know that word. Do you know the word visualize? To visualize means to get a picture in your brain, to imagine what's happening in the story in your brain. I visualize almost every time that I read a book, which is why sometimes if I read a book and then I go and I see the movie, I'm often disappointed by the movie because it doesn't match the picture that was in my head when I was reading. I have 2 books here today. I'm going to try to hold this book in a way that you cannot see it because it's a book that you're all very familiar with. I'm quite confident of that all of you have heard this story before. I'm not going to read the whole book. I'm only going to read about a page and a half. And my challenge for you is when I'm reading to you, try to picture what's happening in your head. You might even close your eyes. You gladly may. No one's going to see. And try to imagine, think of the words that I'm reading and try to get a picture, imagine it in your head. I'm going to share my picture with you when I'm done reading. And maybe by the time I'm done, some of you might know what book this comes from. Listen closely and imagine this in your mind. Late that night, I did hear sounds, though not of ringing bells. From outside came the sounds of hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked through my window and saw a train standing perfectly still in front of my house. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it. A conductor stood at the open door of one of the cars. He took a large pocket watch from his vest, then looked up at my window. I put on my slippers and robe. I tiptoed downstairs and out the door. "All aboard!" the conductor cried out. I ran up to him. Do you know what book that's from? Before I tell you, I want to share with you what I was imagining in my mind when I was reading this. I was imagining a child hearing sounds like a train outside his window. It said late at night, so I imagine him in bed. And then sneaking out of bed and looking out the window and seeing a train with steam all around the train, running outside in his pajamas and his slippers, running out to see what that train is doing parked in front of his house. That was what I imagined in my head when I just read that. Did you imagine something similar to that? Did you picture something like that in your brain? Do you know what book this comes from? You're right. Polar Express by Chris Van Allsburg. A book many of us, I'm sure, have read or have had read to us at some point in our life. Chris Van Allsburg is an amazing author who does an incredible job of choosing words that help us really imagine in our minds what we're reading. to try it one more time. This time I will show you the book cover. I'm going to read you just a tiny little excerpt from a book that my son Jordan and I are enjoying right now called Shiloh. Have any of you read it before? If you haven't, you should check it out, especially if you love dogs, which I do. We don't own a dog, but I do love dogs. If you love dogs, this really might be a good read for you. This author's name is Phyllis Reynolds Naylor, and she also does an amazing job with her choice of words that helps me imagine what's happening in my mind while I'm reading. So I'm going to read just a little bit to you, and I want you to try to imagine what I'm reading in your brain. Are you ready? Get that picture in your head. My favorite place to walk is just across this rattly bridge where the road curves by the old Shiloh schoolhouse and follows the river. River to one side, trees the other, sometimes a house or two. On this particular afternoon, I'm about halfway up the road along the river when I see something out of the corner of my eye. Something moves. I look, and about 15 yards off, there's this short-haired dog, white with brown and black spots, not making any kind of noise, just slinking along with his head down watching me, tail between his legs like he's hardly got the right to breathe. A beagle, maybe a year or two old. I stop and the dog stops. Looks like he's been caught doing something awful, when I can tell all he really wants to do is follow along beside me. What did you see in your mind? The biggest picture I had in my mind was of the narrator, who is a boy named Marty, by the way. I imagine the narrator out for a walk when he spots this dog, a beagle, and a beagle looks something like this dog on the cover. And I imagine a dog that's walking kind of low to the ground, because the author describes the dog as walking in a way like he's almost scared to breathe. And she uses words like slinking along with his head down. That's why I imagine him really low to the ground. And it makes me realize that this dog is scared. I don't know if he's scared of the narrator. He doesn't seem to be scared of the narrator because he keeps following him along. But for some reason, he seems scared. And the author even says, tail between his legs, like he's hardly got the right to breathe. There's something about this dog. Maybe he's feeling guilty. Maybe he's feeling sad. Maybe he's feeling scared. I can't tell yet at this point in the book. If you decide to pick up this book, you'll find out what the problem is. But I can't tell yet exactly what the problem is with the dog, except I can tell that he's not super happy. Something is wrong. And it's because of that picture that I got in my brain. That picture in my brain that imagined the dog helped me realize this dog is not acting like dogs typically act. My neighbors have dogs. They always come bounding up to me with their tails wagging, super excited. That's not how this dog is acting. So now as a reader, I know something is wrong with this dog. Makes me curious to find out more. Visualizing helps us get a better understanding of the books that we're reading, and it helps us to enjoy the books more. I told you when we started this lesson to make sure you had something to write with, so you could write down some things that you as a reader do to help yourself understand. But I also told you to bring a book with you that you're reading. Do you have that book with you right now? Mine, of course, is this book, Shiloh. What I'd like to do next is kind of a different activity for a video format, but we're going to give it a try. Everyone that's watching this video now, we're all going to open our books, wherever it is that you left off in your book, and we're going to spend some time reading. Silently reading, or maybe you like to read out loud. Nobody's going to hear you, so you can do whatever you feel most comfortable with. But the big thing is, when you're reading out of your book, I want you to try to picture it in your mind. Imagine what's happening in your mind. So this will feel kind of weird for all of us to be reading in the middle of a video. So I think the best way to do this would be if we all would pause the video, read a page out of your book. After you have read a page, press play again. Maybe you need to read a couple pages. I'll leave that up to you. But read as long as it takes for you to be able to start to get a picture in your mind of what you're reading. I'm going to read Shiloh. I'm actually not at the beginning of the book. I read the beginning of the book to you because I wanted you to kind of get a taste for what the book is like. But I'm actually up to chapter 12. So I'm going to read a couple pages as well. Everyone pause the video and press play after you have a good picture in your mind. See you in a minute. Welcome back. Were you able to read a page or a couple pages out of your book? Were you able to get a good picture in your mind of what you read? Listening to books is a great way to enjoy books as well, because then you're really free to close your eyes and imagine what's happening in the story. But when you're actually reading the book with your eyes, and your eyes are actually doing, and your brain is doing the work of figuring out the words, you can make pictures in your head as well. Making those pictures will really help you understand the book and more enjoy the book. I hope this lesson has helped you think more about your reading and more about reading your books that you have at home. I'm going to take some time now to snuggle up with my book and enjoy it. I hope you find some time to read a book that you're enjoying today as well. Goodbye, everyone.